But let me dive in, get started on some training here. Let me share my screen. And you don't have to worry too much about taking notes or whatever. I'm gonna share the decks and the recording after the call. So, and you guys are the second ones to get the training. Just so you know, this is new training. We I gave it yesterday to my board. So my board is made up of 12 individuals. They're all active in the recruiting community. They all have at least 10 years of experience. They all took the first training and invested in the company. I do have one spot left for 1% of the company if that becomes something you're interested in and you think this is valuable. Um, Everybody, like I said, everybody in the company is a recruiter. They either run a desk, they're in recruiting, they're in sourcing. I have a couple of staffing agency owners. But this company is by recruiters and for recruiters. So with that, I'll jump in. I like to start with this fact because people feel it, but when you hear it, it makes a lot more sense. You've probably noticed that there's a lot more content online, and a lot of it's AI generated. And the math is such that we're to a point where if you take everything that humans have ever written in all of human history, it's about 156 million books worth of writing. It's a lot. Um, but if you take what AI has written since the middle of 2023 to today, it's about 1,200,000,000 books worth of data. And it makes sense when you think about it, because when you type prompt into ChatGPT or whatever you're using, it's like one or two sentences typically, and then you get 2 or 3 pages back. So and then you multiply that by the 800 million people that are using it for ChatGPT, and then 600 million on Gemini, right? You have over 1 billion people using it on the regular. When you do that kind of math, it adds up pretty quick. So over 90% of everything ever written at this point has been written by an AI.
Wow.
The situation is very overwhelming. If you've heard AI everywhere and you feel like that, there's a reason for it. All of these vendors will tell you they have AI, they do AI. The problem is, and I've taken a lot of these demos, is even if you take all of these demos, you're never going to find exactly what you need. You're still going to have to compromise. I find that to be very annoying, because that was the promise, was AI was going to give me exactly what I needed. And nobody seems to have delivered that. So the thing is, all of these are also built on top of the same models, right? They're powered by ChatGPT on the back end. They're powered by Gemini on the back end, or Claude. They're not building their own models. So what makes it worse is, over time, everything starts to sound the same. And if you do what everybody else does, you're going to get what everybody else gets. So today, I'm just going to, quickly introduce myself. I'm going to give some context about what is an AI and an LLM, how they work, how they're all common. That is to say, what they all have in common. I'm going to walk you through the AI toolkit. I'm then going to actually move around the training a little bit based on feedback yesterday. We're going to get into building our own GPTs, and how to build our own tools. I'm going to give you links to the ones that have already been built. I'm going to give you a copy of directions to get you started. And then we're going to actually get into how to build your own apps, and how to build your own sourcing tool, or at least how I did it. And at the end, we're going to try and get into AI animations and how to use those. If you guys have questions, just jump in. You know, I can't see the questions in the chat. So a little bit about me. I've been in the industry for 20 years now. I've written 4 books, and I'm actually about to go to print with my 5th book, the AI Recruiter 2.0. I was a writer for SourceCon. They don't exist anymore. I was a writer for Recruiting Daily. It doesn't really exist anymore. But I was really frustrated with the lack of how content that was available for recruiters. There was a lot of content out there that said why you should have a good candidate experience or what a good candidate experience was, but not a lot on how to provide a good candidate experience. So I tried to make how my niche. I've worked at a couple of companies you may have heard of: Twitter, Allstate, Capital One, NPR. I've been speaking all over the country and in Europe as well. SourceCon, HRTX, Recruit DC, Talent 42, Sourcing Summit was over in Amsterdam. Pinnacle was a staffing agency conference I spoke at in August. So this is how you can get a hold of me. This is how you can find me on LinkedIn. And if you need to book my time, I do a 30-minute free consultation. So first question I get is like, hey, is this Skynet, is it going to take over? You know, there's a lot of scary stuff online. People don't genuinely understand, I think, what the technology is based on. And I think that creates a lot of questions that are hard to answer, and it makes people kind of disappointed in what the results are that they get. So I am going to share here. Where is it? A tab, because you can only share a tab to get the audio. So the person I'm going to share, it's a video from a guy named Dr. Alan Thompson. He's a PhD in human intelligence, and he used to be the head of Mensa International, so super smart people. His job was to work with child prodigies. So he had a student who was 1 who could read the newspaper. He had a student who was 2 who could name every dinosaur in Latin, right? Like extreme intelligence. He speaks all over the world. He's also a Harvard certified coach. And by that, I mean, he speaks at Bloomberg, he speaks at McKinsey, he speaks at Deloitte, right? He's a global expert. If you're looking for someone to follow online and just understand AI in general, not as it pertains to recruiting, but kind of big picture, his website is called thememo.ai. And he breaks down, like, here's all the different models, here's how they perform, here's how they got on tests, right? He's a global expert. So he does, I think, visual. I'm a visual learner. So he gives, I think, a very good visual explanation of what an LLM is. And he goes over pre-training, which is something every model does, and how that works. So I'm going to click this video for a second, and then we'll jump back into the training. All right.
Yes, I'm going to use what we call in Australia jelly. In fact, if you're an Australian, you'll remember this ad. That's enough of that. If you're American, you'll call it Jell-O. But jelly crystals are finer than sand, and I think they're going to be really useful for us to demonstrate really big data. So one jelly crystal might be the size of an entire web page or even an entire book. And show us what could be possible through giving a lot of data to a really big model. So let's use aeroplane jelly. I've got some blue crystals here, aeroplane jelly. Blue, I think we'll use as the internet or the web data. So let's give that one a bit of a label. This is going to symbolize the entire internet, web pages. Every jelly crystal here is a web. We're going to actually need 6 parts of this to demonstrate how much web we put into training a model. Let's try a different one. What about popular web? So for example, if you go on Facebook, or if you go on Twitter, or if you go on TikTok, you're probably going to be referred to things that are a little bit different to the entire internet. It's been upvoted, it's been popularized, it's been ranked by human beings. Let's use Reddit ratings for that one. This is orange Jell-O. Let's call this one popular. And it's going to be about 2 parts versus 6 parts of full web data. The popular web data is going to be fed in to this model as well. Then let's grab a whole bunch of books, not just the fiction books from your library, but also massive academic publications. Let's grab every research paper that we can find and put it in this training data as well. So we'll use a purple box of Jello for this one. This is going to be books, and this is going to show us everything from scientific literature to Choose Your Own Adventure to Enid Blyton to Agatha Christie. Let's lump it all in here. And the last one, despite what your teacher may tell you, Wikipedia is actually a very good source of information. It's been edited by thousands and thousands of human beings that know what they're doing. Any error is shut down immediately. It's actually quite factual. Let's use a green one here for Wikipedia. This is green Jello crystals, and that'll give us a smaller part. We'll just use one part of Wiki. This will show us some of the factual content. So that gives us 1, 2, 3, 4 different types of data, and we're going to put them in different ratios. Let's pour them into the jar now. Our 6 parts of web might be 100 million web pages, just general websites. Our popular websites might be 8 million web pages that have been upvoted by humans. Our books and papers are millions of books and millions of university papers. And our Wikipedia content is about 6 million web pages. Here's our final product. 6 parts web, 2 parts popular web, 2 parts books, and at the very top there, 1 part of Wikipedia. And different labs are using different weightings for this training data, but let's take this as our entire training data for our AI. The next step is to feed this into the Google Transformer that we just spoke about, the magic black box program that can take words, make connections between them by looking forward and backward in the words, and then come out with what some people are just calling magic or miraculous. Let's see how close we can go to explaining that. And let's put the whole thing in a magic black box, because we don't actually know, and the researchers, the scientists, don't know what happens. They take the training data, they put it in this magic black box, and they train it for 288 years worth of computing. Isn't that absurd? So a model trained in California took 288 years of computation to come out with a result. One thing we can do, though, is run it on more than one computer at once. So, for example, we could run it on 1,000 computers at once. And instead of 288 years, it might just take 3 months, which is exactly what happened. They put it in the black box, they put it in 1,000 different computers, trained connections between all of this data, and after 3 months, they had a little piece of magic.
Okay. So I'd like to clarify that a little bit. What they did is they took all the data they could get their hands on, right? And every major model does the same thing. And they have this data, and it's not actually reading the data or trying to understand the words. It's simply mapping the connections between the words, which is something computer scientists have been doing for a long time, just never at this scale, never at this volume. And what it does is it creates like a 3D map, right, along X, Y, and Z of the words. And so it's looking one word, it'll take any word it's given, right? It'll look for the word right after and the word right before, and then back and forth, right? 2, 3. And it starts to, it's called a vector database. So how it will work is like on the x-axis, if you can imagine Apple, it's going to say, okay, words that are similar to Apple are like strawberry, banana, you know, kiwi, right? Grapefruit, all these fruits. And then over here along the y-axis, so down here, it's going to be like fruit. And then along the z-axis, it'll be like food, right? So it's mapping these things in 3 dimensions. That's how AI matching works, and why it works better typically than a lot of other systems. It's just taking the words that you type in or the words that you speak and it's running them through that process, and it's mapping out. It says, okay, here are the words you gave me. Here's how those words are connected to other words. And then based on that, here's what's most likely to come next. That's called pre-training data. And all of the models had that. They all have that now. They all basically have the same data set. This is why ChatGPT is on Red Alert. I don't know if you keep up with their news, but Sam Altman called Red Alert because Gemini just went past him in capabilities, because there's not a lot of different, and you're going to see this, they're going to keep passing each other. And that's why they're paying $100 million for somebody to do AI. Now, a single engineer is that one person can make an impact on the model and how it uses that pre-training data. So what we've been thinking about super intelligence and how it's going to work is kind of starting to evolve and change. What we thought originally was there's going to be this super intelligence that knows how to do everything, right? It could do everything every human could do. And it seems the more and more we get down that path, that idea wasn't completely correct. What it seems like is it's going to have the same basic abilities as a really smart person. A really smart person doesn't come out of the box. We come out of the box knowing certain things. We know how to see, we know how to breathe, we know how to eat. Nobody teaches us that. Like, that's programmed into us. But intelligence is really the capability to learn. So what the super intelligence is, and this is really going to apply to our work today, is it's basically the ability to learn any skill. And because it's so much smarter, on paper, it can learn a lot faster. So when it's doing the matching, that's what it's doing. It's taking the words that you say or that you type, and it's mapping those out in 3 dimensions. And then based on its internal data set and understanding what's come before, based on, hundreds of trillions of words, what's most likely to be next. And then beyond that, how it's trained is up to each model. So that's why they work differently. Does that make sense? I just want to make sure we're all on the same sheet of music before we move forward. Okay, cool. So I'm going to get back into the training, and we're going to get to our first win here. So I'm going to put this in the chat. This is called LM Arena. And this is our first little tool giveaway here. This is super neat because this is access to every major model without having to pay for it. So this is Claude, right? But all of the major models are here. Here's Gemini 3 Pro, GPT 5.1. You could sign up for this with any email you want. Gronk is in here. MinMax is in here. Most of the major models are in here. Kimchi, some I hadn't even heard of. But this is usually in the developer world fairly well known. And what they're looking for here is feedback. So you could do direct chat, or you could do side by side, and you could compare 2 models to each other. People ask me, what model do I recommend? What model's best? And it's a tough answer because it really depends on your style and what you're trying to accomplish with it. Now, the challenge is you're going to have to pay like $1,000 a year if you wanted access to all these different models. Well, this gives you the access to all of the major models without a cost. And what they're looking for here is anonymous feedback on how their model performs and how it compares to others. So if you put a prompt in here and you could say, explain to me, line 12, why is the sky blue? Right? And it'll do side-by-side comparisons for you. And you could say, okay, at the end, it's going to say left is better, right is better, right? Which one? And this is what they're looking for. And this is the next part of how the differentiators between the 2 of them. This is called RL, reinforced learning. See, this is better. It's a tie. Both are bad. Right is better. So this is what they're looking for. And as a matter of fact, if you've noticed on Facebook, you now have a thumbs up and a thumbs down. That simple feedback is reinforced learning. Human reinforced learning is what it's called. And that actually improves the model. So this is a way for them to get, the developer community to put their models head to head. They advertise this in developer circles. They obviously don't care about what recruiters think, but that doesn't change it, right? Like it's a legitimate website. These companies all pay to host this site. They share the expenses. They've all hooked themselves up. So this is a way you can get in and dial in on, hey, what works best for me, right? And all you have to do is say, give them feedback. So that's what they're looking for. The other thing I like about this is if you go to you could do battle, which is kind of blind, but you come into here and like do Gemini 3, and we're going to come back to this, but it has a coding app. And so we'll come back to how to use this for coding, but this is the most advanced model, or some people like Claude or Claude Sonnet 4.5. It's really good. Again, you could do side-by-side comparisons and decide what you like, but here's a Tetris clone. Birdful, like it has these push button functionalities. So you can get it to code, you can do it to do research on the web, you can get it to generate pictures, or you can get it to build an app or a website for you. This is, we're going to update our website. So, we're creating a members area. It wrote the code. I'm just actually going to give it to the developers, and they'll implement the code. So super simple. Any questions on this or how it works?
Oh, very cool.
I love this stuff.
Yeah.
I spend way too much time watching YouTube videos, but this is in the developer community. They know it. So yeah, it'll be in the presentation. It's lmarena.ai. The next tool, and I use ChatGPT 5, actually 5.1 now. Not because I think it's the best, but because it's the most commonly used tool. It's kind of the grandfather at this point, but I pay for the $20 a month version. I think a lot of people do. In order to build GPTs, you're going to have to pay for some version of AI. So the principles here will apply to anything, but there are some features here that I think are worth noting that are really helpful for recruiters. So if you go into ChatGPT 5.1, and this is my paid account, you'll see this little button down here. It says add files and more. There's actually this deep research button, and this is incredibly useful because this actually does, for me, a lot of the research I would have done as a recruiter. Now, this is a simple example, but you can give it more detailed instructions. In fact, what I typically do now is I tell it, and we'll go through this when we're building an app, but I tell it, here's my idea, here's what I want. I need you to act as a technical business analyst for me and act like on behalf of the development team and ask me what other questions you would need to know the answers to in order to really fulfill my request. So again, I have it, I spent a lot of time recruiting software engineers. I'm not one, but I know what a technical business analyst does. And their job is to talk to the client, try and understand what the client wants. They go back, they formulate like a questionnaire, and then they go back to the client to clarify. Once they have that from the client, then they create the requirements doc. And that's the process I generally follow, but this is just a simple example of how powerful this can be. So I went down, I put it into deep research mode, and I said, hey, I'm a recruiter looking to hire mechanical engineers from Boston for a job for my client. They need to be professionally engineering certified. Can you give me a table, right? And again, this is the nice thing. I can dictate the format that I get my response in. I like a table format when I'm getting this kind of data. 10 prospects, right? You could put 20 prospects, 30 prospects, 50 prospects, whatever. I think probably at about 100, it starts to crash out. So I would keep it under that. But then I would say include all the publicly available information. Give me their name, their email, their job title, company socials. And then it came back and it was like, hey, I have a couple of questions for you, right? I filled it out. Again, this is just a sample. I didn't actually have this job, but I used to recruit engineers. So it said, thanks, I'll compile it. It actually went, and like normally even the deep thinking models aren't going to think for more than a minute, but this thing actually went out, did its homework, scoured the internet, and then brought me back the list of candidates. So it's got their name, their title, where they work, their email address, and then the link back to their LinkedIn. I ran this for nurses as well. And again, you could say, hey, right, I wanted more. So this is incredibly useful, I think, as researchers, because you wanted something that saves time. To me, this saves time. It can do the research for you. And again, this one, I asked it to go back. It took another 17 minutes, conducted 197 searches on its own, looked at 38 different sources. I don't know how long that would take me, but probably longer than 17 minutes. So it does the deep research on the internet and for you. And so you pop open another tab if you're still using the AI, and you go have another conversation, and then you click back on it, and boom, it brings you stuff. And it'll tell you like, hey, I went to this website. It gives you the actual link here. I think that's amazing. Any questions on this or how to use it?
Is there any way to get beyond 100? Like, could you re-ask it after and say,
Yeah.
exclude those, but find 100 more?
Yeah, and I think it comes with 25 a month. You could do this. So yeah, I'd be like, hey, this is excellent. Thanks for I try it out, like ramp up. Do you know what I mean? The number you get each time, you'll
Mhm.
find where it crashes out for you, and then you could bring that back down. But then yeah, you just put it back into deep research mode, and you'll see it pops up over here, and it's now searching the web. And you could just say, hey, I really love this result. This is great. Can you please give me 50 more unique and new, profiles? And this will just, for 20 bucks a month, I can't think of a cheaper way to get this done. This is a really good resource. And again, it's unique. This feature is unique to ChatGPT. I haven't seen it in Gemini. I haven't seen it in the other models yet. I expect it will come. But again, to me, this is just something that will really actually save you time and actually go do the research for you. And I know that that's always been one of the challenging parts. Like I really enjoyed that part back in the day. I used to put my headphones on and go do my research. This is the same sort of thing. I actually looked, and I'm thinking about building an app that will just index websites of professional engineers who are certified. So like every state, if you're a registered nurse, you actually have to register on a website,
Mhm.
and that has your information on it. And then, index those websites with the AI, and then figure out where those people work, and then the email address format for that company. And then boom, you've got every nurse in the state. The AI recruiter is something we're going to build, and this is what we're going to get into next, but I want you to see where we're going with it. So I've created, and we're going to create next, an AI recruiter. This one's available in the GPT store. You can use it for free. There's no paywalls, nothing. I was using it originally to see if I could do it. And at this point, it's got over 5,000 uses, and it's got a 4.3 star rating from over 50 reviews. So it's pretty effective. But what I like about it is not only does it give me the chance to automate my work, but elevate my work. So, I could have it just write a job description for me, but there's a quote you're going to hear, I think, more and more often in the not too distant future about AI. And that comes from Einstein. And he said, imagination is more important than knowledge. And that's where I really want to encourage you guys to go with it, is not just to automate your work, but to think about how can I use this to make it better? Because like we saw earlier, image generation is now something it can do. So what I originally asked it to do was create a job description for me for an oncology nurse in New York City and format it like a patient chart. Once it had that described and done, I also said, make it EEOC compliant and the language gender neutral. And it wrote this up for me. And then I said, awesome, can you turn that into a photo, with the clipboard like it's a patient chart? And then it created this for me. This is going to make you stand out more than the AI slop. And this is what I like about teaching people how to do it themselves. If you just push the button and you say, hey, write me a job description for an oncology nurse in New York, you're going to get a very bland description. But if you're like thinking about how do people in this particular profession, do they engage? With a driver, it might be, hey, here's my route plan, right? With a nurse, it's a patient chart. With a lawyer, it's a legal brief. So, take whatever it is in your industry that they're used to receiving data on, and then format the job description that way, and then have your AI create a picture of it, and then you could post the picture. This is visually better. It's more engaging, right? Like you have assessment, vitals. It's like in their lingo. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So this definitely is more effective than a regular job description. Now I'm actually going to flip over here, and I'm going to give you guys this as well at the end of the training. But I created this separately because people get really excited and they're like, oh, I love this, and they go off and want to do it, and then I get 1,000 emails afterwards and they're like, I forgot step 3. So this is going to be like literally step by step with arrows and everything. So this is where you go. You're going to go to ChatGPT. I'm doing this on ChatGPT again because it's the most commonly used program. It's not the only one to do it. They will all have similar options to build a GPT for them. But in ChatGPT, here's how you do it. You go, right, there's going to be a little button that said explore. Once you click that button, you're going to have all of this stuff down here with their top picks, right? But you're going to want to go to create. And then once you get into that, you're going to see a screen that looks like this. You're going to name it, right? The AI, I named it the AI Recruiter. You can name it whatever you want. My AI Recruiting Assistant, whatever you want to name it. You're going to describe it. Now, I usually have these specialized for 4 tasks. This particular one writes emails, job descriptions, candidate summaries, and interview prep guides for me. It can do more than that, but those are the 4 things that it has push button functionality for. And then I add directions. There's a link here. I'm going to put this in the chat as well for you guys. I'm actually going to give you 2 sets of directions. I'm going to give you the set of directions I wrote. And then I'll give you the set of directions the AI wrote based on what I wrote. And you can decide which one you want to use. But there's a couple of parts to building a GPT that I do differently. So I've watched way too many YouTube videos, and 90% of the people, 95% of the people on there teaching you how to do this are software engineers. And they don't teach it how to write, and they program it in Python, and they don't give it any examples. And I get it, they're engineers, that this is how they think, right? They've been programming computers for forever. This is their way. The first thing I do is I actually give it a rules for writing, which people think is counterintuitive. Why would you teach an AI that writes rules for writing? Well, because of how I explained it, right? Out of the box, it's going to be the most average writer there is. It's going to understand what you're saying, and it's going to give you a coherent response, but it's going to sound like everybody else's. There's a couple of things that are dead giveaways, right? That we all know at this point that an AI wrote it. So if you get an email that says, I hope this message finds you well, like 99 times out of 100, that's an AI. The EM dashes, that's an AI. The follow-up that says, were you abducted by, that's an AI. And so that actually becomes less effective over time. So the first thing I do is I give it rules for writing, and they're right down here, right? Replace adjectives and adverbs with numbers. Show, don't, tell. Again, this could be anything that you want it to be. I just gave it 10 really good rules for writing in general. You could say start every email with a question, or start every email with an interesting fact, end every email with a call to action, transfer between paragraphs with a question, right? Whatever it is you want to do, whatever your writing style is, if you can give it instructions, that's the first part of getting it to write better than anyone else. Now, if you get stuck, and this is in the training and the other slides as well, sometimes it could be a little intimidating, saying, hey, I've got, all of these options. What does that even mean? And how do I even make the best use of that? When I get stuck, this is what I do. I go to it and I'm like, hey, I'm a recruiter. I'm trying to use this tool for writing, but I don't know what my options are. Can you give me what are my, in a table format, can you give me what are my writing options? What are the variations? Can you explain it to me like I'm 5 or 12 or whatever? Give me an example prompt and give me an example output. And it does this. And so now instead of staring at the blank screen, trying to like rack my head on trying to be creative, so my messaging stands out and my job descriptions stand out and my candidate summaries and my candidate pitches look different and they don't look all AI generated, right? It could be a little taxing. I'm not actually an English lit major, although I think at some point they're going to inherit the earth because they're going to know more about writing than the rest of us. But what it does here is it just gave me, right, an option. So now I could tell it I want the tone to be, professional. I want the voice. Now, again, it's creativity in the voice of, right, mimicking somebody. I want it to be in the voice of Yoda, and I want iambic pentameter and use emojis, right? It could be casual in the voice of Garth Brooks, like a country song, right? Whatever combination. To me, this is again an empowering thing. I don't actually have to write it in the voice of Yoda in iambic pentameter, which I think would be incredibly challenging. I just have to know that that's an option and be creative enough to come up with it. As a professional, active as an expert in nursing, using industry lingo that only orthopedic surgeon would understand. Again, I don't have to know any of that. I just have to be creative enough to do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is give it directions on how I want it to write. I'm going to set the tone and the voice. For recruiting, my default is like professional tone in an active voice. But again, you can make your own thing. The second part of it is what you're going to find on YouTube. That's giving it directions on how you want it to complete a task. Remember what I said, like it's really good at learning. And so this is where you're teaching it. Like it knows general information, but this is where you're teaching it how to do something the way you specifically want it done. Now, the only main difference, or the real main difference between prompting and programming, is the first few lines of instructions aren't the prompt. It's get the information. So in the past, if you wanted to prompt and write an email, you'd say, hey, I want to write an email to this person about this topic. I want you to be professional and enthusiastic, right? That's the prompt. And it would write that one email for you. Now, with a program and a GPT, you're basically saving that work. And instead of just prompting and putting the prompt in there, you're going to say, okay, if I was doing this task myself, if I was writing an email, what would I need? First, I'd need to know who's the email going to. Then I need to know what the topic is. And then I'd ask if there's any special instructions. And so that's exactly what you do here. Ask the user, which 9 times out of 10 is going to be you, for the following information. Who's the email to? Ask for a resume. What's the job about? ask for a job description. I put these in different steps sometimes. Sometimes I put them together. I get a little bit better result when I separate them. So step 1, ask who's going to. Step 2, ask what it's about. Step 3, are there any special instructions? Then beyond that, my next steps are basically the prompt, right? I want you to start all emails with an interesting fact or question. There's a little hook here too. And I used to think maybe I just wasn't as good at prompting, but I found out from my software engineering friends that no, computers sometimes, for whatever reason, no matter how clear your instructions are, they just don't follow them. So if that happens to you, this is a little trick I learned from software engineers. So if you tell it to start emails with an interesting fact, and it keeps starting your emails with, I hope this message finds you well, that could be really frustrating. And I've asked it, like, why didn't you follow the instructions? It's like, oops, I've got it. Next time I'm fine, right? Like, it's just so annoying. And I'm like, no, you didn't, because you keep doing it. So if it does that to you, that's not you. That's just whatever glitch in the system that happens. So I put in a little step here that lets me know, this is, again, a software engineer trick. It lets me know it's not listening to my initial instructions, but I'm the only one who's wiser for it, right? So I put step 3, if you start with, I hope this message finds you well, replace it with greetings. And then so when the email starts with greetings, I now know it's ignoring my directions about starting with an interesting fact. But at least I know what's doing, and it's not, as a catch, as a safety, it's not doing the dreaded opening. And then you put step 3, the step above that is a mandatory task. And then step 5, I go back, right? End emails with a call to action. This is really important because you will get really frustrated sometimes because you will think your instructions, and they are perfectly clear. You'll ask the AI, hey, was I unclear? It's like, nope, I understand. And then you're like, it's like arguing with your kids. Like, then why didn't you do what I told you? I'm sorry, I'll do it next time. And it's just like the next time it does it again. So if you run into that in any aspect of programming your GPTs, 1, know that you're not alone. And 2, know that this is a good way to fix that. Because now it never says, I hope this message finds you well. Sometimes it will start with greetings, but most of the time it obeys and does what I tell it to. The other thing that gets skipped over by a lot of people teaching you online is you can give these things examples. And I get it. Computer scientists and engineers, they're not used to being able to give a computer an example, right? Like when they're just straight up coding, there's no examples in coding. It's just instructions. But that changes with AI because it can understand context. So if you have a really good email that you like, that you feel like, hey, this gets my tone, this is a really good hook, this is a really good example, you can actually put under here step 6. Here's a good example of what an email outreach email should look like. So you can actually write it right into the code, or you can give it examples of data and uploading it. So this is what I'm talking about. And I'm going to go back to the other slide set here. When I was a recruiter and somebody or sourcer and somebody would reply back to me, hey, thanks for your message. Now's not really the best time. Can we connect later? I would reply, forgive me for not introducing myself fully the first time. My middle name's Opportunity. Do you have 15 minutes to talk to me? 100% worked. Always worked. We're like, yeah, okay, I got 15 minutes for you. So that's an example of what you mean, and the example that you give it will actually really help improve your output. And this is why everybody else's stuff is going to sound the same and like garbage, and why if you follow this process for creating your own tools, it's going to be unique and stand out and really allow you to apply your creativity and your knowledge of your industry and who you recruit for and your candidates to create things that are going to land a lot better. And you're going to get the speed advantage of AI, and you're going to get the creativity and differentiator, whereas everybody else is just pushing a button and spamming their candidate pool to hell. You're actually going to write content with a hook that has emojis, right? It rhymes, it's engaging, it uses their industry lingo, it was written just for them. And that makes a big difference over time, because again, to me, the benefit of AI isn't I just don't want to make myself faster. I also want to use this to make myself better. So my challenge to you guys, and what I hope you take away from this, is as you're thinking about building your own tools here, you start thinking about what is the best possible way that this could be done. And so I gave some examples here. These will be in the training. The third thing you can do, and I'm going to flip back to the other slide deck here, is you can actually upload data. This is why I gave everybody the books on the back end. So right here, my instructions, this is where the instruction goes. You're going to go down here to conversation starters. One's going to be write an email, right? The second one's going to be write a job description, because I like the push button functionality. And then when you push the button to write an email, it's not just going to write an email. It's going to ask you, who's it going to, what's it about, and do you have any special instructions for me? Once you fill that out, it'll write the email. Now, the nice thing about that, now you could do a conveyor belt. It used to not be able to read LinkedIn profiles, but now it can. So once it writes email 1, you just copy the email or the URL from the next LinkedIn profile of the candidate you want to contact. You drop that URL in and say, please repeat the above, right? And it'll write the email using the same instructions as before to the next candidate, and then you do it to the next candidate. And now you have this process that can create custom outreach emails that's really fast, but also custom and unique to each candidate. So it's not going to sound like an AI, and it's not going to get hit. You're not going to hit with spam. And in the course of 60 seconds, you can get 10 to 15 emails out once you get going. And again, I, as a sourcer, I typically didn't like to send more than 20 emails at a time, because to me, if I'm not getting a response rate on those first 10, those first 20, I would normally like to get 6 to 8 emails back on sending 10, because I'm taking the actual time to write the email, not just spamming the universe. If I'm not getting at least 5 or 6 back on that first batch, I change it up, because I'm not landing, right? So to me, I don't necessarily want to do 500 emails in 30 seconds, because it's going to trigger every spam filter on the planet doing that. Even AI, even LinkedIn now catches that you're sending bulk emails, and that's going to be lower response rates, and it's going to land lower on the response rate. So this is the way I do it. Like I said, everything here is step by step. Here's where this goes. Now down here, this is your knowledge base. This is where you're going to upload files. So I sent you guys a copy of the AI Recruiter and the AI Analyst. This is where I would upload the AI Recruiter. And what that does is, again, it learns, right? So off the street, GPT is like somebody who's just a genius, like they have a 155 IQ. They're really, really smart person, but they're not going to be an expert in recruiting. What this is doing is taking that same person and giving them the benefit of 20 years worth of experience of recruiting. And so now you've got a genius who's also an expert in your field. And a bigger takeaway for you guys in this is, if you have digital books on literally any topic that you're interested in, history, stock market trading, accounting, the Idiot's Guide to Fill in a Blank, right? You can actually upload that to the back of your GPT, and now you've got an expert in that topic, because what it's going to do is it's going to read that knowledge base every single time before it reacts. And it's so much faster than a human. It takes fractions of a second to read an entire book. But that's kind of like bringing it top of mind. And so if you teach it how to write, you give it explicit instructions about how you want it to act, and then you give it examples, your output is going to be consistently better. It's going to hallucinate a whole lot less. And the outputs it gives you aren't going to sound like AI slop. They're not going to sound like everybody else. They're going to not only make you faster, they'll make you better. So, right, this is the step-by-step directions. Here are the tips. And then, right, what to do when it doesn't follow your instructions. Any questions on the GPT stuff before I move into the deeper waters here. We're going to get into some real serious stuff next. So any questions? How you guys feeling about this so far?
Just a quick question. What do you mean by the hallucinations within GPT?
You guys still with me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear Brett. I can hear you, buddy.
Okay.
Yeah.
You
Good.
can hear us? Can you hear us?
I can't hear either of you for some reason. Okay.
Hmm.
Cool beans. Now, next, just a tiny word of caution here. This is my Jurassic Park Peter Parker moment. You can get yourself into trouble using AI. We have an example in the market today. Workday is the biggest ATS. They have a class action lawsuit against them, and it looks like they're going to lose or settle. Where they were accused, their AI was accused of discriminating against people who are over the age of 40. That's going to end up costing them a lot of money and reputation and a lot of actual money. So the other reason why I like building my own tools is if you have Workday, you have no idea how it's sorting the candidates or how it's ranking them. And if you can't explain it, that means you could be discriminating against people. Whereas if you say, I told it to sort this particular way, the same I would do as a recruiter, you still may be in trouble, but there you have a leg to stand on, right? You're like, Your Honor, automation is not a new technology. This is, me automating this process the same way I would do it. It may not come up with the exact same results that I do, but no two humans are going to do that anyway. Even if I gave another human the exact same instructions and I followed them myself and we went through the same pile of resumes, we're still not going to rank them the same. So it keeps you out of trouble. So just a possible thing to think about is, could I explain this to a judge? And if I was the judge hearing that explanation, would I be like, that's malarkey? Or would I be like, okay, that kind of makes sense, right? That's the test I like to do. So we've gone through this. The AI analyst, this is another tool I'm going to give you guys. We had the book. I'm going to give you the instructions for this as well. A lot of times our hiring teams, they just don't read. And a lot of times they're like, hey, I like what you've seen and given me, but can I see a few more for comparison? And that makes me want to scream. I'm not real fond of that answer. And I don't love the fact that they don't really get to trust us until we've made a few placements for them. So one thing you can do is you can absolutely use this to get a report on the market. My prompt here was, tell me, give me a report on the labor market for recruiters for the last 6 months. And it did this really nice lookup, right? Here's the labor market for recruiters in November 25. Here's the summary, blah, blah, blah. A lot of hiring managers aren't going to read that. And that's frustrating, but charts are really easy to understand, especially when it comes to salaries. So this is a graph of the salaries that recruiters make. So I zoom in on it. Oh, I can't zoom in on it for some reason. Here's the bottom 10 percentile. Here's the top 90th percentile. Here's the number of open jobs over the last few months. I think we all know this in recruiting. Anytime the economy heads into recession, we're the first ones to go. Again, follow the same process to build the GPT that does this. But the thing, again, I like to take into consideration is the fact that now I can create charts and graphs, and that will actually get paid attention to. People look at charts, people look at graphs. And so this makes the data that you're trying to get over to them easier to consume, because they're also not an economist. And they don't understand, like, if you're hiring nurses, there are 3 nurses in the world, in the US anyway, for every open nursing job. So I'm going to be able to, the market will bear 3. And if we're going to get past 3, that's fine. I just want you to know we're overperforming the market, right? We're going above and beyond. That's extra work, and it helps set the expectation. I'm going to pause here because next we're going to get into some really technical stuff. We're going to get into building our own app. Do you guys have any questions for me so far?
Can you hear us, Mike?
Nope. Good. Okay, cool beans. So I
Can't
mentioned
hear
I was
us.
going to come back to LLM Arena here, and I'm going to describe the process first, and then I'm going to show you what I did. So I'm an old sourcer. I took the old AIRS class. I learned Boolean. I learned how to X-ray Google and X-ray different sites. Now, for the sake of my very first app, I wanted to keep it straightforward. So here's what I wanted to do. I wanted to create an app that would do automatically what I did manually. And the first thing I would do back in the day, especially when I had no budget, is I would go to Google and I'd create a Boolean string and I would look for the talent. And after that search, I would get, the candidate, the prospect's name, their job title, and the company they worked for. I'd get that out of the search results, right? But I didn't have their email address, and I always felt like that was a real limitation to that particular method of searching. So when I was at Allstate and I had to find all of these people's contact information, I came up with a new method. And honestly, I looked, there's Hunter.io, there's Lucia, there's websites out there that can find an email address for you. Back in the day, none of them were free, and I didn't have any money, any budget for recruiting. Now, Hunter gives you a certain amount of credits for free every month. I think Lucia does the same. There's a couple of others. But what I really discovered after years of sourcing was 90% of the time, the email address format was firstname.lastname@company.com. And what I started to do was I would go do a second search in Google. I'd pop up another window and I would say email address format of company, capital one. And 9 times out of 10, the first answer was from Rocket Reach, and it would give me in the summary of the response of the link the email address format. Now, if you click on it, it's like, hey, sign in to get the email address format. But on Google, it would just display the email address format for that company. So that's what I wanted it to do. I wanted it to do first an X-ray search of publicly available information. I started with LinkedIn. I'm working on my next one. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Wayback Machine. People don't change the jobs that often, and the Wayback Machine doesn't care if you index it. It's designed to be indexed. And it also indexes everything. A lot of people have spent a lot of time trying to get past the paywall on LinkedIn, but the Wayback Machine actually indexes every website. Companies typically have an agreement with the Wayback Machine, and I don't even know who those guys are, but I don't know how they make it free, but whatever, they do. And so I can index a website through the Wayback Machine and get access to more data. But I digress. So that was my vision. I wanted to be able to put or to search by industry, and this was another frustration for me as a recruiter. When I was a recruiter at Capital One, if you looked at Capital One and you looked at the software engineers who worked for us, half of them would say they were in software engineering as an industry, and the other half would say that they were in banking. So people sometimes put their employer's industry, sometimes they put their profession as their industry. And anytime you use that industry filter, you're losing a big percentage of your results. And if you start building these complex, this industry or that industry, right, the more complicated something is, the more likely it is to break. Now with LLMs, however, they understand what you mean by industry. And I'm going to get into a live example here in a second. So here's the process I followed. First, I understood what I wanted it to do. Right, I wanted it to do automatically what I was doing manually, which is search LinkedIn and do an X-ray search with LinkedIn on Boolean and find the prospects. I wanted to find their name, their job title, and the company they worked for. Then I'd open a second Google search and I'd look for the email address format of that company, and then I'd put that person's name into that email address format, and I'd message them at work. Now, I prefer work emails to personal emails because two reasons. One, I'm an old sourcer. I came up through staffing. I was cold calling Deloitte back in the day, trying to get people at their desk because that's where they are. I also know I check my work email a heck of a lot more than I check my personal email because I have my work email open when I'm at work. So all of my competitors are trying to ping people on LinkedIn and they're being lazy. I'm getting to somebody's inbox right now. So I was able to, and if they didn't like me messaging them at work, they would simply reply, "Hey, thanks for reaching out. Please send it to, here's my personal email. Please send future correspondences there." Totally fine. But again, I come from the recruiting world. This is a professional opportunity. I want to reach somebody where they're most likely to respond to me, and that is their work email. And again, I'm not competing for space on somebody's inbox by using LinkedIn InMail, where all of my competitors have written crummy EI generated emails and gummed up their inbox, and they go there once a month. Recruiters are there all the time, but most average professionals don't go to LinkedIn that often, but they do go to their professional website frequently. So that was how I did it when I was a recruiter. Now, here's the process I felt. Once I understood what I wanted it to do, I wrote a very basic prompt, and I went through and I used a lot of different models. I actually used LM Arena, like I told you before. And I went back and forth with different models, trying to get it to build this for me, right? So each one built a different thing for me. These didn't work right out of here, but act as a senior full stack. So I originally said, here's my prompt. I want you to act as a business analyst, take and fill out this, like it's a technical requirement doc. So I had that prompt. It asked me a few questions. I answered the questions, and then I would get it to write the prompt for me. And this is the prompt it would create. It would create something like this, right? And it would go through it. And then I had it put into, programming mode, and I had them do it side by side. And these are little mock-ups. And I ended up liking Gemini 3 the best. Again, this is just my preference. This is why you have this tool. You can go back and forth and figure out what works best for you. Now, these actually aren't designed to actually build a product for you, but they can write the code. And so I had it actually write the code for me. So it did a prompt, and then you can see there's code, all this code. And I kept going back and forth until it was effectively very similar to what I wanted, right? Industry, location, keyword drive. Now, these aren't, again, designed to build product. They're designed to write code, but this actually doesn't work. So I took this code, and there's several out there. You can get free accounts. Lovable is the one I use, but there's also Base 44 and Maker, and there's a couple of others. If you don't have a budget, that's fine. You can build one a day for free in Lovable. You get 5 credits, I think, per day to use to build. But again, I don't have to build an enterprise product with this. It just has to work for me. So I took it, I put it into Lovable, and I came up with, and actually I need to fix this again because I had an export functionality here. But what I did was I would go in and I would say staffing, Atlanta, VP of sales. Now you could do this for sourcing, or you could do this for different aspects, right? You could do it for sourcing, you could do it for lead gen. It comes back, all of this works, right? Here's the LinkedIn link. This is this person's profile. So what I did here is I said, I went through the same process, right? I wanted the name, the job title, and the company, and then the link back to their profile. So that is one search. And then I want the synthesized email, right? So I've used ZoomInfo, I've used Lucia, I've used Hunter. If you get 40% accuracy on those emails, you consider yourself lucky. Actually following the email address format is about 80% accurate. So I actually get better results without linking it to another website. I have it go back and do exactly what I said. It goes back and does a second Google search and finds the email address, does a search, looks at the results, finds the email address format from the search results, and then plugs the person's name into that format. And it works. Like these emails are good. Like if I come, if Randstad USA, and I come in here and I look for it, it's an actual website. And to me, this is a thing of beauty. I can also export my results. Now, I only do 10 at a time. Now, there's one other thing you need to learn, and this cost me hours of time. So I'm going to save you this. For a live search, it can't actually do a live search out of a demo product like this. You actually need to go to this site right here. It's called Serper, serper.dev. And this is where a program gets the tokens in order to actually search Google. Because if you're searching from your own desktop, that's a deal with your ISP. They typically provide that for free. But if it's coming from an app, they don't want to get overrun. And so there's a limitation. And if you don't have something like this, then your app's never going to work. So you're going to log into Serper, you're going to create a free account, and it will give you an API key. And they give you $25 worth of credits for free for signing up. I haven't run out of credits yet. But if I do, I'll put another $5 into my Serper, you know. I can export this at any point and I can keep going. So it's like the deep research one, but it's much faster and I don't have the limits like I would on a Google or like a ChatGPT deep search. So it'll show me who I'm dealing with. It'll give me their title. And again, it understands what staffing needs, right? Like I used to, you know, the company I started with is Spherion. It's now part of Randstad, actually. So these are all staffing agencies. It understood what I meant. Sometimes it doesn't always get the email, right? Sometimes it just doesn't work. But most of the time it does. It gives me a good email address. And again, I can export this. I could put this in my CSV, do a drip camp or my CRM and do a drip campaign or whatever I want to. Now, if you want to take this and make this an app, it's probably going to cost you some money. You're actually going to have a developer untangle it from, you know, Lovable or Base44 or whatever you use. But this is going to be the way to build it. And like I said, once you've mastered one of them, once you've got it down yourself, then it's good. The other thing is, it might be that the code that Gemini or whatever Claude writes for you isn't perfect. And that's okay. Lovable has this little thing called chat where you say, hey, this particular thing's not working. I want it, so it doesn't charge you your credits, right? So you can actually talk to it. What I find crazy is after I had the code and I put it into Lovable, it was working like 80%, right? The email address formats are wrong, or the export function didn't work, or it was not bringing back the company name, right? Like 80% of it was fine, but it was a different 80% every time. And I kind of just was like, well, here's what I'm trying to accomplish. What do you recommend? And it says, if I understand you correctly, you're trying to get the email address formats. What really shocked me is it talked to me like a sorcerer. It was like, here's what I'd recommend. Number one, you know, write a Boolean string, da, da, da. I'm like, wait, X-ray and Boolean, you're talking to me like a sorcerer. But it did. And then it gave me 3 suggestions of what to do. And then it said, my recommendation is a combination of number 1 and number 3. And here's what I mean. And it explained it to me. And it said, would you like me to do that? And then it just put a little button and it said execute. And I was like, it cannot be this easy. Push the button. I pushed the button. It started rewriting the code, right? And it came up with what you see. It fixed the problem and the whole thing worked. So I'm actually going to take this and we're going to embed this in our website. We're going to charge, I don't know, $9 a month or something for access to it. And I'll expand it over time so that it can find, you know, phone numbers and personal emails. But out of the box, it's an MVP, right? It took me several hours to learn the process of how to do it. But now that I know how to do it, it's 45 minutes, an hour and a half to build my own app. And again, I don't need an enterprise level app, right? I just need it to sit on my desktop and work for me. And that's what it does. So it's a totally customizable app that works exactly how I would do something manually. And I take that and I have the AI automated. You guys said you wanted to save time. To me, this is the biggest takeaway of how to do that, because building GPTs are super useful. Don't get me wrong, that will save time. But if you can build an app that actually follows your particular process, and it's just like you fill out the information and then it runs, it does your sourcing for you, it does your lead gen information, it does your research for you, that actually saves you a ton of time. And again, I recommend starting with sourcing because it's something most recruiters know how to do, right? Like we all have our own way of doing internet research and how to find contacts and the information we need online. Start with a prompt saying, hey, I'm a recruiter. This is what I want to accomplish. Act like a business analyst for me. And you're gathering technical requirements. In order to build an app, what else would you need to know? It will ask you a bunch of questions. Fill it out and then say, now please create an expanded prompt that, you know, completes this that a technical business analyst could take to a developer. It will finish the prompt. Once you have the prompt, I go back in and I say, okay, now I again use Gemini 3 Pro because that's the one I've found works best for me. But whatever model, go into LM Arena, drop the prompt in and say, hey, I need you to write the code to create this app. It'll write the code, take the code, put it in whatever developer tool you want, Lovable, Base 44, Maker, there's a million of them at this point. Drop the code in. I also drop the prompt. I say, I'm going to have a prompt and the code. So here's the prompt, boom, and then here's the code, boom. Hit it, go. It might get you there the first time. I mean, there's miracles. It's probably not going to work correct the first time, but then I hit chat so I don't use up my credits, and I say, okay, we're close. Here's what I'm not seeing that I'd like to see. What do you recommend? It's designed to build. It's GPTs. They're using engineering GPTs on their own, right? Programmed by engineers to build programs. So it will read the whole thing for you. It reads all the code, it reads the prompt, and it says, okay, here's what I think you're trying to do. Here's what I recommend. And then it always will say, do you want to implement one of these, or do you want me to just implement my recommendations? I say go with the recommendations because nobody hears a software engineer. No offense to any of us, but that's not just our thing. That's not what we do. And iterate with it. Now, again, I recommend keeping your first one simple. Like I didn't have it look at LinkedIn and GitHub and Stack Overflow and the Wayback Machine. That became too complicated for it, and it became too complicated for me. So my recommendation is, you know what? I don't care. I know everybody wants something off of LinkedIn, but LinkedIn's terrible at searching LinkedIn. Just between us recruiters here, it drives me nuts that Microsoft owns Bing and LinkedIn, and they still use Lucerne for the search engine. Even though it's AI powered, it's still Lucerne, which is the free search engine. Like, seriously, guys, you own Bing. Bing's not a bad search engine. I know it never got the traction that Google got, but that wasn't because it's a bad product. It's actually a really good search engine. why don't you please, for the love of all that's holy, put Bing as the search engine? They won't do it. So I never use LinkedIn. Even when I had LinkedIn Recruiter, I never used their search engine. And then the filters are garbage, right? Like you put skills in and it treats the skills like an or and not an and. I don't know who thought of that. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. Like, why in the world are you treating my skills like or? I need somebody with all of this, not one of this. Anyway, it makes my blood boil. And you know, they don't care about us as recruiters anymore. We're small potatoes, right? We're $1 to $2 billion in sales, and they're a multi-trillion-dollar company. So I'm not trying to take it out on them. They got great data. They just don't have a great way to search it. So for me, I've always done X-ray searches with Bing and with Google to search LinkedIn. However you want to do it, that's up to you. But hopefully you guys understand the pattern, and it'll save you a lot of hours of frustration and wanting to throw your laptop out the window. You know, there's a process to follow. Once you get it down, though, it's really empowering. You're like, I am not a software engineer, but I just built a freaking app and it works. And it's going to make my life easier. I felt really good about doing that. I hope you guys do too. I'm going to pause here. Do you guys have questions for me, or?
Can you hear us, Michael? We can hear each other.
I hear that it says that you're speaking, but I can't hear you guys. I don't know why. I'm sorry, guys. I can't. It says reducing noise. What it's doing. Continuous chat is off. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back and I'm going to put the GPT directions. I'm going to share the link here. And copy the link. So this is the directions to put into your GPT. I'm going to send the presentations and stuff to after the call. So now we're going to come down the home stretch. There's one more thing I want to show you guys how to do. And that is how to animate either yourself, and you can create an interactive avatar of yourself, or you can use it. One of the things I started using it for, especially with a new client, is I would take the labor market report, right? I'd get it from the AI, I'd have it create it for me. And then I would say, can you rewrite this like it's a nightly news report for, and then I put my client name. Now, most of them have a policy that you can't use their AIs to create news. So they're worried about fake news and all this stuff. So I call it a report, labor market report. And I take the script it created and I drop it into one of these tools. So I'm going to start sharing my screen again. I'll show you what I mean. Actually, I'm going to open up, hang on. I'm going to open up the specific video I use, because then you'll actually be able to hear it. I don't know why we're in 2025 at this point, and I can't just share my screen and you hear things. I still got to share a tab. I think that's kind of frustrating, to be honest. But I'll give you an example of what it can look like. And I created this one a little bit earlier this year, so the data is a little out of date, but the principle still works. So I just pulled that open, and let me share my screen here. I'm going to share the tab. Tab. Here we go. So again, I created a labor market report with some really basic data I pulled about recruiter jobs. I threw that into the AI analyst, and I had it create a labor market report for me. Once it created the labor market report, I said, thank you. Take this and now turn it into a script like it's a nightly news report. I didn't call it a night news report. I called it the AI talent intelligence report. So I got past their censors, because if you say it's a news report, their policies aren't going to let you publish it. But here we go.
Good evening, and welcome to tonight's edition of the
I
Talent
don't know why.
Intelligence report. We begin with a look at the job market for recruiters, a profession.
This is probably my internet here. I have a billion tabs open,
And welcome to
life of a
tonight's
sorcerer.
edition of the Talent Intelligence Report. Good evening, and welcome to tonight's edition of the Talent Intelligence Report. We begin with a look at the job market for recruiters, a profession that saw a hiring boom, a bust, and now signs of stabilization. The rise and fall of recruiter demand. First, let's take a trip down the hiring roller coaster. In 2021 and 2022, demand for recruiters skyrocketed as companies scrambled to hire after the pandemic slowdown. At its peak, recruiter job postings reached record highs. But then, 2023 hit, companies pumped the brakes on hiring, leading to a wave of recruiter layoffs and hiring freezes. The question now, is there a light at the end of the tunnel? Well, the latest data suggests a slow but steady recovery in 2025. While we're not back to pre-pandemic hiring levels, there is a cautious optimism in the air. One trend shaping the future? Specialization. While generalist recruiter roles took a hit, industries like tech, healthcare, and AI-driven hiring are seeing increased demand for specialized recruiters. And companies are rethinking how they hire recruiters, many opting for contract and RPO, recruitment process outsourcing models, rather than full-time roles. It's all about flexibility in uncertain times. So, what's the playbook for companies looking to rebuild their hiring teams? Here are 3 key takeaways. 1, hire based on business needs, not just market trends. The hiring surge of 2021 taught us that overhiring can lead to painful layoffs. Smart companies are balancing scalability with stability. 2, competitive compensation matters. With salaries adjusting post-pandemic, recruiters are looking for more than just a paycheck. They want growth opportunities, flexibility, and a company that values their expertise. 3, AI and data-driven hiring are the future. Companies using predictive analytics to forecast hiring needs are staying ahead of the game, preventing the cycle of overstaffing and layoffs. As we move through 2025, one thing is clear: the recruiter job market is evolving. It's no longer just about filling seats, it's about strategy, specialization, and smart hiring. And as always, we'll be watching the trends so you don't have to. I'm Alex Davis, and that's the way it is. See you next time on the Talent Intelligence Report.
Okay. So that is a way to definitely get the hiring manager's attention. They will definitely notice that.
Yeah.
Oh, I can finally hear you guys.
Yay.
Yay. So I do that when I'm working with a new hiring partner, right? I'm like, hey, here's your talent intelligence report. And I have the AI, hey, good morning, Dave. Here's your talent intelligence report for the labor market you're seeking in November, December 2025. They pay attention, and then I know I've got them when they're like, so you're the AI expert. Are you afraid of Skynet or what's going on here, right? Like, yeah, now I've got you. Now you're actually paying attention to me. You know, I believe in show, don't tell, right? Now I'm showing you I'm actually an expert in AI because everybody says they are, but there's no real noticeable difference in the way that they deliver. So we made it through. Normally I have a much bigger class. We have more questions. So I try and give myself 30 minutes at the end for questions. And, I get stopped along the way for questions. So we're coming towards the end of the content of the class. Do you guys have any specific questions or anything you wanted to go over?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
A few. Brett, do you want to start or what?
You go ahead. I'm looking at my notes.
Do you think it's crazy? Okay, that's not the right way I want to phrase this. We are paying people overseas right now to go find our contact info. Brett Burkhart's time is definitely not best used finding contact info for every little candidate. Do you think that should be like almost totally automated, at least for email finding?
Yeah, especially if you have a specific company in mind. Now, there's two ways you can do that, or three. One, I have my app does it for me. Again, it's searching Google. I put it at 10 at a time because I didn't want to trip any alarms from LinkedIn or from Google. How you want to do that's up to you, what limits. And then I just export the file. That's the simple way. The other ways I could do it, you can actually use the research tab on ChatGPT to do it, especially if you have a specific company in mind. So if I was looking for mechanical engineers from a specific company, I would turn the research mode on and I would say, hey, this particular I'm a recruiter, I'm hiring people. My client loves people from this company. I need you to go find all publicly available information about the people with these job titles because job titles to the market don't mean anything, but job titles in a company do, right? So like IBM calls them software developers, not software engineers. So if I was x-raying IBM, I'd say I'd want all the software developers. I want their name, and I want anyone who has an expertise in Python, Java, machine learning, well, whatever. And I'd actually spell it out. Now, if you're getting it like you just want email addresses, I use research. There's another tab there you can actually use 30 times under the same thing. It's called agents. And if I was looking more broadly, or if I wanted to be more specific, like I just put mechanical engineers with professional engineering in a given industry and a location. I didn't really care. But if I really wanted to get specific about the candidate I was looking for, I'd actually use an agent. And it's under the same tab under ChatGPT. And it will spend 15 to 30 minutes doing that for you, especially when I was recruiting and I knew what I would do is I would use my talent intelligence and I would say, what are the companies, I'd look at my client and I'd first have the AI take a look and say, what are the top 3 companies that the people at my client worked for before? Or I just ask the client, hey, what are the companies you hire from the most? Where are the most people from before this? And they'll give you a list. Awesome. Now I've got my targets. And I'd actually use the agent and I would say, hey, I'm a recruiter. I'm looking to hire people. And you got to make sure you say publicly available information because otherwise it will refuse. But you say, I need publicly available information and I need their name, their job title, and here's the email address format of the company, right? So or you don't even have to tell it that. It'll figure it out on the agent mode. I need their name, their job title, their LinkedIn profile, their GitHub, whatever you want. And bring for this one specific company. And bring me the first 25 results. Because if you don't, sometimes it'll just give you 5 and you're like, are you kidding me, right? You did 15 minutes and I got 5. So I usually say, bring me the top 25 candidates. And then once I get those and I verified that it's actually done what I asked it, I say, actually, thank you. This is perfect. Can you now give me another 25 unique results or 50, right? I push it. And the nice thing about it is it runs that in the background. So you can go do something else. You don't have to actually sit there and wait for it. You could be productive, do something else. And then once it comes back to you, it's actually just downloadable usually. And if it's not, you could copy, paste it, put it into Sheets, put it into Excel. Once you've got it in that format, you can save it as a CSV, put it into your CRM and let it go. So I wouldn't be, as much as I used to kind of think it was therapeutic to do that kind of stuff. Like I'd put my headphones on and I'd block 2 hours on my schedule and I would just go do my research. To your point, right? It's not a value add. There's not the most efficient way to do it. The most efficient way to do it is have either your app do it, to build it the way you want it to be built, to be done, or to have the researcher or the agent. Again, I like going after really specific companies when I'm actually recruiting because, I was at Nielsen and I knew if I could get anybody at Comcast, there's no fight. There's just an interview, right? My hiring team's not going to push back. They're just going to interview anybody coming from Comcast because that was our only real competitor at Nielsen. So I liked doing it that way. And it got all of my research for me. It got the number one place, and then I could take that and I could do a cut, like write an email, right, in my AI. Write an email. Here's the, and then I just had the links of the profiles when I downloaded it. I just throw the link in. I get 25, 30 emails out, and now I'm done. In the amount of time it took me to do the research, I'm now done. So yeah, short answer or long answer is yeah, I think so.
What about when it comes to personal information for contact info? And then also one other question alongside with that email finding. Do you test the emails or do you just go with what's the most likely and send?
So you can actually build that into it, an email verification, and it'll go to like mailtester.com. I recommend telling it where to go. For personal emails, I don't actually use the Google search. I sign up for an account with like Lucia and Hunter.io, and Hunter's actually really the best for that. Now, you're probably going to be using it more than the 50 free credits you get, but Hunter will give you an API key as well. And so when I was building my app, I dropped the Hunter.io API into it. And so that had a better chance of finding a personal email. Because finding a personal email from outside using Google is really challenging. It's going to take too long.
Mhm.
But if you go to these tools, most of them are now built for developers, right? They have the extension for the average user, the average recruiter could just push it in. But most of them, if you log into their actual site, there's a developer tab usually, or you can just search API and there'll be a place where it'll either generate an API key for you or it'll say, here are your API keys. Now, if you're using it on Lovable, that's totally fine because nobody's going to steal your API key. If you're going to build it into an actual app that other people are going to use, you're going to have to hide the API key is in there, but there are ways to make sure it doesn't show up on the code. So if somebody right clicks and hits inspect, they could just find your API key and use all your credits. You don't want that to happen. But if you're building it for yourself, that's what I'd recommend. I'd say first I'd give it SERPer so that it could search Google because you want the information to come out. You might as well get that out of the way. And then instead of going back to Google, I'd say, now I want you to look this person up with Hunter.io. Here's the API key for Hunter and see if you can't find me their personal email address and their phone number. Because those tools exist and you might as well use something. You could, in theory, build your own knockoff version of Hunter, but that's just an extra step to me. Like, why? I could spend $5-10 a month on Hunter and have it find all the emails. I mean, especially if you're paying somebody. I have the pro version of Lovable because I use it a lot and I pay $50 a month for it. But even that's way, way, way cheaper than hiring somebody. And it's way cheaper than having a software engineer. And I actually don't even use $50 worth of, there's a $20 a month account. And if it's just you guys and it's a small team, you can all share access to the Lovable. And then you just publish to your own desktop the tools you want. And then your team has its own bespoke tools and it's costing you $20 a month all in, plus your chat GPT is another 20. So you're talking about $600 worth of invest to get all that time back to be able to find all that data for you. And again, is it as good as a person or bad as I don't know. I was a sourcer for a living. I think it's comparable to how good I was. I think there's probably stuff I could do. Like I used to look on Amazon for authors, right? I could look at patents and there were more details I could get into as a human, but that again takes a lot extra time. This is 80% of what I was doing in an automated fashion. So worked for me.
Do you think that AI is like capable of creating a comprehensive list of companies? Like anytime I try to get, I want every company that does this type of construction in this state, and I ask for more, I'll do the deep research. It'll give me maybe 10, 12, and then it'll keep repeating some. I'll ask for unique ones, might only find one more, but then me manually, I will find 20 extra ones that I didn't find from there. And it's hard to be able to give it a prompt and trust that it found everything.
Right. And that's because this is my experience with it. The prompt you're putting in isn't detailed enough. That's why I start with my prompt. and I say like, hey, I want to find everything. Tell me what I need to say and what I need to prompt in order to get that level. It's just the same way when I do pictures, right? Like I want a picture of this, and this, but I need it to, to be professional and detailed. Talk to me like you're a photographer. What other information? And then it's like, what's the aspect ratio? What's the, pixel definition? Do you want it high definition? Do you want it like Van Gogh? Do you want it photorealistic? Right? And this is all stuff I'm not a photographer. Oh man. So that's been my general experience with the deep research. Before I hit the deep research for the agent, I take my general prompt. And again, I like Gemini 3. LM Arena is free to use. So you figure out whatever one you like. And I say, act as my analyst or as my expert prompt writer and flesh this out for me. And then I go into the research when I'm like, the sample in class is meant to be straightforward, but when I'm actually doing it, I have the AI take my original prompt, create a more in-depth prompt, and then I go to agent, and then I go to researcher, and it does better. Can it find everything? I don't know. And this is the thing. I think for the moment, a human is going to be better and more detailed because we're sitting here thinking through it in real time, whereas it's basically a snapshot of thought. Anytime you do a prompt, it's like, what you're doing while you're doing your own sourcing is you're iterating the prompt in your head based on your experience. So long term, I think it'll probably get better than us. But if you're just looking to save time, and you like 80% of the market is good, which typically that's enough. The reason a lot of times I can't find the other companies is because they're a lot smaller, right? They don't have the online presence, which means not always, but typically they're not as good of a prospect for me. But if that becomes an issue, I add things too. Like if I've gotten all the major players that I already know, then I start asking for I'm looking for companies with less than 50 employees, and I add that into the prompt. And here's who I've already found, so no need to refind these. And it's a mixed bag, to be honest. But the thing is, you're exchanging time for quality, right?
Mhm.
And what I've learned from corporate America is if it's 80% of good and 20% the cost, that's what they're going to do every time. So I'm inclined to make the same sort of decision for the return on investment in my time, unless it's really, really something that's going to be mission critical to me for a long time. I let the AI do it.
Mm-hmm.
There's times that I would like to use AI, but the information that I have is sensitive and we don't want to put it out onto the internet type of thing. Is there a way to have an AI in a box where you're not leaking your information to the world?
So this is the policy for OpenAI is if you pay for the account, they're not going to train on the data. Whether you believe it or not, that's up to you. The short answer is yes, but it's cost prohibitive because to build your own model that can do what OpenAI does, even on JP Morgan has their own, for example, because to your point, they have a lot of sensitive financial information and they just don't trust Microsoft with it. And I can get it. If I'm me, the chances of Microsoft holding that over my head are pretty low. But if it's JP Morgan and it's billions of dollars worth of information and IP, it'd probably make your own sense. But to build your own LLM that can competently do, what most of these models can do, you're going to spend several $1 million indexing data. It's just not worth it. Plus, you're also going to have to set up your own server. You're going to have to test it. The other problem with building your own is, I don't know if you remember ChatGPT 3, but it was in the news a lot originally because it would run off the rails. It told one reporter to leave his wife. It used to tell me to basically take a long walk off a short pier, because it's reflective of the data, right? And if you're indexing the internet is not professional and polite. The internet is very crass and rude. And so if you're indexing that data and you put it in, even if you spent the money to do it, you're going to come out with a model that's not going to give you the professional outcomes you're looking for. So I get that. I think in small doses, I trust Microsoft with 20, $20 worth of IP, $100 worth of, maybe $10,000 worth of IP. Because again, it's not, you're not JP Morgan, you're not, Citibank, you don't have the information you're putting in there isn't super
Okay, from
valuable.
LinkedIn anyways, right, Brett?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they own LinkedIn, but it's like kind of like this bottle worth of water in an ocean, like it's not worth it to rob you. So for the professional versions, I feel relatively safe in putting that kind of information in there. And then again, when I'm making an app, I make sure that the PII is publicly available data.
Yeah.
Fair question. Anything else you guys have for me?
I'm sure I will the moment we would hang up.
What I think we might want to do, Michael, is let us I think you've really got our brains going here.
Awesome.
And I'm sure we'll be happy to invest in another hour or two to kind of go through maybe some more specific use cases for us just to chat it out.
Sure.
And bat some ideas around. So that's kind of what I'm thinking as we organize ourselves and maybe have a little agenda and get some more time on your calendar if you're open to that, Michael.
Yeah, that works fine for me.
Yeah.
I appreciate you guys' time, and hopefully I've provided some value here. And yeah, just let me know, and we could book some more time down the road.
And I never put the pieces together. Microsoft owns LinkedIn.
Correct.
Okay, yeah. So it's all, and I'm using a lot of Copilot just because it's convenient on my Teams thing, and so it's putting
all Microsoft.
Yeah, all Microsoft. So there you go.
Yeah. This is the thing I'm careful about with Microsoft is actually I don't want my app to do too well because Microsoft was the one who piloted this model. How Bill Gates got rich was he let people write programs for his software. And there was a thing back in the day called Lotus Notes. It was open source. It was built by engineers in their spare time. Well, he turned that into Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel. Like he looked at what was most pop, and he did it like he had developer day, and he'd give them awards and write, "You're a great engineer," and then he stole. He flat out just and Facebook does the same thing. They have their app market, right? And any app that does really, really well, Facebook just copies it.
Yeah.
And so ChatGPT has the same sort of thing where they have the GPT store, which makes me nervous, which is why I'm building another AI, because I don't want the one I'm using right now to get more popular, because ChatGPT is just like, oh, well, we have an AI recruiter now. I don't want that. So I'm a little bit cautious of these guys because that's their business model. But
can you keep it private?
You could keep it to yourself, but they have access to everything you put onto their server. So keeping it private will keep it from reaching notoriety, though. Yeah. Now I did this one publicly because, again, I'm a show not tell kind of guy, and I've got it. I can't. Everybody in the world's out there is like, I'm an AI expert, and you're like, prove it. And they haven't built anything useful in AI. Right. This is what always has driven me nuts about our profession is there's a lot, like I've gone to a lot of recruiting conferences and it's like candidate experience is important. I'm like, well, no, duh. I know that part. How did you do it? And then, I would listen to the questions after. And inevitably the question is, how did you guys get executive buy-in to do this? And they're like, was the executive's idea that this was important?
Yeah.
I'm like, thank you for telling me absolutely nothing of value, right? So that drives me bonkers. So I have some of this stuff out there for free. It's kind of like proving that, hey, you can go test this out for yourself. It's not going to cost you anything. You can see I actually was a recruiter and actually built something that's kind of useful. So, but what I'm excited for is to teach people how to do it and then watch them apply it to their own work. I had another recruiter take the class, and she built out her entire interview. I'm trying to remember what it's called, but she put in a few questions and it would come back and it would generate all the interview questions. It would pick the interviewers, right? It would pull up the schedules. And that's how they all like got done with stuff. I like on my own candidate submittals, I have at the end of it, I say, I want you to create a table with the job requirements in column A, how the candidate's experience matches in column B, based solely off of my interview notes in the resume, and in column C, what percentage match that is. So not only does it generate the pitch for me, it also creates this table at the end. Well, if at this point in the interview process, everything's an 80% or better match, you're going to have to give me a real good reason why you don't want to meet that person.
Yeah.
Because there's not more screening I could do at this stage. So, and you know, I've had different feedback on that, and I've had different pushback on that. And I'm like, well, that's in legally questionable territory. Do you sure you want me to say no?
Sure.
I put that in writing too, because I know if it happens, they're going to go, well, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an expert. I trusted my recruiter. They will throw you right under the bus. And I'm not a fan of being thrown in front of buses. So I use that to protect myself. Good, great question. Is there anything else I can answer for you guys?
I think you covered my questions.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate it. If you found it valuable, I always appreciate testimonials. If you want to just send me a letter, or if you want to write on LinkedIn, hey, we just took the training, you could tag me, tag Lex Duo. I really appreciate it. Helps me get the word out. So thanks, guys.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Have a great night.
You too.